how do we build our children's self-esteem?
That's a great question for mom.
Well, I think that when I was raising you guys and when we were raising you guys, we always thought that self esteem was produced by, making sure that you were good at something. And so we would always give you opportunities to play soccer or baseball or dance or, I don't know, all of those other things. And we thought that when you'd get good at something, that would
Your
mean.
self-esteem will increase, yeah.
And so, but what we've learned since then is that self-esteem comes from learning how to give your word and keep it. And that's something that the world doesn't teach. But as you learn to keep your word, to give your word and say that you'll do something and then you do it, you learn to have self-respect, you learn to love yourself, you learn to just have a deep, solid respect for yourself. And we would do that, with our kids, with, jobs around the house, having them keep their word when they would go places, what time they would be home. And I really think that that's the key. What do you think?
Well, and children, they're not going to be perfect, neither are parents. At the same time, anytime we can build self-esteem in a child that has self-love, self-esteem, high self-esteem, they're going to make better choices in life. And that's what Mom and I have figured out, is we've realized that kids that have high self-esteem, they're not out there making poor choices like, whether they're going to abuse their body in some way, drugs or alcohol or something that is damaging their body. They're going to make healthier choices because they like themselves and they have a better view of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, if we can focus on integrity is a real key issue with self-esteem. If we can practice reminding kids, Renee was really good about that, about always saying to the child, instead of, did you clean your bedroom? Did you do this? Did that? Did you keep your word? Did you do what you said you would do? And we had agreements in our family where we would have assignments and responsibilities that each of the children would do every day. And then she would often say, or I would often say, did you keep your word? Did you do what you said you would do today?
And that's kind of a natural byproduct of keeping your word, is that you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
And like Dad was saying, it's like people that feel good about themselves, they don't want to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
They don't want to do stupid things. They feel good about themselves.
And children and adults all want to keep their word. I'd say, Kylie, did you keep your word? Did you do what you said you would do? And we feel worse when we say, no, I didn't do that. Or when we say, yes, I did that. We all want to be the kind of person that would be respected for keeping our word, doing what we say we'll do, and coming through for others and for ourselves. And so then again, we would often say to the child, we want to support you in that self-esteem. We want to support you in that integrity. We want to make sure that you have integrity with yourself and with others. And so will you keep your word on this, or will you keep your word on this?
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do this, and I'm willing to do that. Not always as a trade-off, but just so that the child is always feeling like, what did you say you would do?
Yeah. And they own it.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I think that helps a lot. And a lot of times children would say, in fact, Mom and I should just role play this since we're both here. Did you get your homework done?
Well, I was really busy this afternoon. There was just so much going on. And I had soccer practice, and then I had piano lessons, and then I just had a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, so you had a lot going on. Well, did you commit to do your homework?
Well, yeah, but there's not very much.
So did you keep your word?
Well, I didn't really. Well, I didn't really keep my word, but I had a lot going on.
Well, yeah, you have a lot going on. And how did you do? Did you keep your word with yourself, with your teacher, with the class? Did you do what you say you would do?
No.
And see, we want to stick with that over and over and over, not in a way where it shames or puts her down, but in a way that said, did you keep your word with yourself and with others? Typically, a child will want to say, the teacher's so stupid, and nobody does their homework in that class, the dog ate my homework, they'll come up with all kinds of reasons.
Oh.
Let's role play that again and say, okay, let's
Let me ask you, did you keep your word? Did you get your
well,
homework?
well, nobody does their homework in that class. I didn't.
But did you give your word to do your homework?
Well, yeah, but nobody does their homework. It's and they still pass the class.
And did you give your word?
Well, yeah, but I didn't have time. I was busy. Like you were saying, I was busy. I had a lot going on.
And did you keep your word?
Well, no. And so if you stay with that lovingly, with no shame and no guilt, the child will eventually come through, and then you can talk about that, whether you kept your word or not, and that's going to build self-esteem as you focus on integrity
That's great.
rather than the job, if that even makes sense.
Yeah.
But a child will often take you on a tangent. They'll take you down the street. They'll take you to the dog ate my homework. They'll take you to nobody has time or nobody does their homework. They'll take you, and so will adults, by the way. They'll take you everywhere. If you follow that as a parent, if I said to Renee, "Oh, you were really busy. I'm so sorry. Do I need to help you with your homework?" Yeah. Well, yeah, you probably didn't have time to do it. If I go with her, then we never focus on integrity.
Yeah.
And then self-esteem just kind of goes out the window. That makes sense.
Interesting.
So we've learned that over the years, and it's helped a lot with ourselves and others.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you.
I think another fun thing about that is setting up consequences for yourself too, though, because a lot of times I always tell the story with myself. I was working with, I had a goal of somebody asked me if I would exercise 3 times a week, one of my mentors, and I said sure. I said I'll do that, and I didn't keep my word. I didn't exercise, and so he set up some consequences for me. He said, well, how about if you have to take a cold shower every day that you don't exercise?
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So the next week he called me up and said, how'd you do? Did you exercise? And I said, no, I took 3 cold showers. And so he said, okay, we need to up the consequences. So he's trying to get me to up. He says, and so he gave me a suggestion. How about if you pay me $50 every time you don't exercise? I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't have $50,
Yeah.
But so he upped my consequences, which were set in advance and not guilt or shamed. They were set in advance. So the next week, he said, did you exercise? And I said, every day I exercise.
Yeah.
I'm not paying you $50.
Yeah.
So I think that's another fun part of
Yeah.
the integrity piece of this is setting up consequences for yourself. And we don't like to set those up unless the children have gone several times breaking their word.
Yeah.
Or not keeping their own integrity, so to speak. So if there's a pattern of something, we like to say, okay, maybe we need to set up some consequences. Can you help me come up with some consequences for yourself for not keeping your word in this particular area? And that's a whole other thing we can go into another time, but it's kind of a fun thing you can set up. And then you can have the children help you set that up, and then you can go back and say, now what did you say you would do if you didn't get your homework done,
Yeah.
or if you didn't get your bedroom cleaned, or if you didn't get the bathroom cleaned, or whatever that is.
Okay.
It makes it kind of fun.
Yeah. Love that. So what about the opposite end? If, okay, for instance, my 5-year-old, she has a lot of confidence and which is great. Like, I love it, but she'll come home from, let's just say, like a soccer game and say, Mom, I am the best on the team. What do I do with that?
Well, I think it's great to know that she has a healthy look at herself.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. The thing that's hard is you don't want to get into comparing and competing.
Sure.
And so you want to talk to her about what she has done and keep the focus on her, not I'm the best. But did you do your best?
Her own personal goals.
Yeah. Did you do your best? That's all that really matters. And I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you. I love you either way. And I'm glad that you're a good player. I don't know. What would you say?
And go back and say, and how did you feel about it? You feel like you did your very best?
Yeah, what
You
do you
keep turning
feel?
that around so she's not competing and comparing. Like, I made 6 goals and the other girls only made 1, So they want to get away from the competition and compete and see if she can compete against herself. And the other part of that is, I always like to say to children and other people, as long as you're teachable, and I'm guessing your girls are very teachable, as long as they're teachable, they're not prideful, they're not overzealous with their comments about themselves. So it's critically important to make sure they're still teachable and still learning. If they're better than everybody else and they don't have to do their work or something like that, then they're not teachable. So part of it is that humility part that says, wow, you've really done well, and how are you feeling about how's your heart, how's your soul, how are you feeling about yourself?
Yeah.
But when I think we all learn in our society to compete and compare ourselves to everybody else, which starts very, very young, believe it or not. And that's a hard thing to do or to get away from.
And I think it's interesting because I notice in my own life, when I make a mistake, I can do 9 things great, and I can do 1 thing and make a big mistake, and that's the thing I remember.
Sure. Yeah.
And so in dealing with children, it's hard. You don't want to point out their flaws so much, but if they can see if there's an area, for example, if I were to say, is there something that you feel like you want to work on, or is there, how are you feeling about that? And if they come up with that, then support them through that.
Yeah.
But help them to feel good about themselves too. That's important.
Yeah. I've also heard to not label them like as the best player or even smart, things like that, but instead of saying you worked really hard, or focus on the things that they can continue to get better and focus on, so that when they have a failure, they're not crashing.
Well, and so they believe that they're not their behavior, they're not their performance. That's a great thing, and it works very well to perform well. It works very well to pick up your socks when you're in the house, to pick up your clothes, and that doesn't make you better than someone else. But it works well, and so we like to focus on what works well and what doesn't work well. It works really great when you practice the piano all the time, or you practice soccer all the time, or you make a lot of goals. That works really well for the, can work very well for the team, and not that you're better than someone else, but life works better when we keep our word, when we keep our agreements, when we keep our commitments.
Yeah. One of the things that that has really been life-changing for me is when you look at people in general, or children especially, and be able to separate them from their behavior or from their performance. Let them know, you know what? I love you no matter what you do. You got an F? Do you know what? I still love you. Does it work to get an F? Let's say you get an F in everything. You might have to repeat the 3rd grade. That's okay with me. I will love you either way. It's up to you. It's up to what you want to do.
Sure.
Another concept that goes along with that we look at is, maybe they come home with a poor grade, and we like to say things like, well, some people get C's and they don't get scholarships when they go to college, and they seem to make it pretty good. They have to work while they're in college. Some people get A's and B's and they get scholarships and they don't have to work when they're in college. Some people save their money. Some people spend their money. Some people lie and cheat. Some people don't. Some people are honest, and and the some people. So when you're dealing with kids, some people do this, some people do this. What works for you in your life? And some kids will say, well, it really works for me to lie. Well, really, does it? Is that really what you want to do? Do you want to be counted on? And sometimes kids will say things like, well, yeah, I don't have to keep my word. So then I like to go back and say, how about if you worked for somebody, especially a young teenager? How about if you worked for somebody this week and they said, well, I changed my mind, I'm not going to pay you. Well, that wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be fair. Exactly. You expect other people to keep their agreements. They expect you to keep your agreements. We expect you as parents to keep your agreements. You expect us to keep their agreements. We'll go out and buy food. We'll provide a home. We'll get carpet on the floor, whatever. And life runs on agreements. So keep your agreements and life works. So you go back and say, okay, let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. Works to be a team player in your soccer team. Works to kick those goals in there. Doesn't make you better than someone else.
Yeah.